Hi, a film I watched this morning that I've seen promoted in a few places is Oxygen, a French language science fiction thriller directed by Alexandre Aja, who's worked on a huge range of films in the past. First came to my notice with Switchblade Romance, released elsewhere as High Tension, a incredibly brutal, graphically violent French horror film. But Oxygen is a bit more underplayed and a bit more mainstream. It's about a woman who wakes up in a some kind of medical uh, container in which she'd been in cryogenic suspension, has no memory of who she is or how she got there, and desperately tries to use the facilities at her disposal, including the artificial intelligence in the container, to find out who she is and how she's got there before the already low oxygen runs out. The lead role is played by French actress Mélanie Laurent, a role that had been previously earmarked for Anne Hathaway or Noomi Rapace, who remained on the film as an executive producer. And the voice of the digital assistant is Mathieu Amalric, a name I have difficulty with for some reason, um, playing a kind of Siri type assistant rather than artificial intelligence. It, it's a system that will help her as much as its programming can, but she has to ask the right questions. Um, I found the film to be far too long. It's pushing 2 hours, and aside from a few brief cutaways, we never leave the inside of this cryogenic container, and there are no other actors on screen apart from in some video material that's shown and some flashbacks. So the the onus is on keeping things fast and keeping things developing, but the film's pace is such that it's never able to justify the length. Really, it needed to be much tighter and could easily, I think, have been an hour long Black Mirror type anthology episode rather than a 2 hour uh, feature length drama. The other issue I have is that some of the twists and turns in the plot are extremely unbelievable. Um, as the story goes on and we find out more of what the situation is and what's going on beyond the container, and I'm trying to avoid spoilers here because you don't really need to know those going in. Um, there just seem to be more and more holes in the concept and uh, a level of world building that doesn't seem to be justified by the story. Um, Everything has to have a more complex explanation than it feels necessary to give. As a result, I found the film to actually be quite testing on my patience. Um, and I was constantly checking the amount of time I had left, rather like the character who's constantly checking the amount of oxygen she has. Um, it's not the kind of thing I expected from Aya at all, who has continued making more recently sort of creature films like I think the remake of Piranha and Crawl about a woman trapped in a house in the Everglades surrounded by crocodiles. So something like this is much more serious and low key and more less sort of B movie ish. This is trying to be something a little bit more sophisticated. So it's nice to see that he's changing up his style a bit, and the film tries its best to maintain visual interest. But ultimately, the script is just too flabby and too long, and it really should have figured out how to tell this story in a much tighter way. You can make films that are shorter. An hour and 20 minutes is perfectly fine if that's the length that's justified by the material. And I think something a lot shorter would have benefited this film enormously.